Woodcraft since 1928, providing traditional and modern woodworking tools and supplies to generations of craftsmen. Woodcraft, helping you make wood work.
Hello, come on in. My name is Rick Butz. Welcome to woodcarving. This isn't your usual whittling knife. This is something called a Klotzi-Messer that's from Switzerland, and it's used for doing large carvings on the outsides of buildings. What I'm doing with it today is I want to do a little decoration on my kitchen cabinets, and I thought that a little carved design would be kind of nice. And this type of knife is ideal for doing these large sort of designs. One of the nice things is this kitchen door has already been finished, so what I'm going to do when I get done here is just take and wipe on some medium brown stain. The stain won't penetrate into the areas that have been finished, but where I've carved away the finish here, it'll soak into the wood and give it kind of a nice dark look. The only problem is, now that I've got this one done, I'm going to have to do the other 12 doors. This type of carving is called chip carving. Let me show you a couple other examples of it. This is a match holder, or a One-Führerzug, and there's kind of an interesting story behind this. This particular piece is carved in butternut, and as you can see, it's carved with all sorts of little tiny triangles, and that's one of the characteristics of chip carving. The pattern for this was given to me by an old German woodcarver, and he had used this design as part of his apprenticeship in Germany, back in 1910. Here's another example of chip carving. And this is a Swiss-style breadboard. And this one here has been carved along the border, and I've carved out a circular design here, which is called a rosette. And I'll be showing you how to do that a little bit later on here. The beauty of chip carving is it's something that looks terribly complicated. It looks like something that'd be really tedious and take forever to do. But actually it goes along quite quickly, and it's a lot of fun. Let me show you how to get started. First, we need a block of wood, and I'm going to use this bench hook to put my wood on. This is a square piece of wood that's got a little strip underneath and a strip on top. And this hooks against your bench, and then you can brace your wood against it, and that gives you something solid to support it with. Now for this type, 6 Schnitt, which means 6 cuts. And for this one, I've taken, once again I've drawn 3 lines that are parallel and about a 1/4 inch apart. Then I take my dividers. I'm going to make this one a little bit bigger. Make this one a 1/2 inch. And I'll come off and I'll tick off a spot. And so on. I'll stagger at the top between the two. Come along. Tick those off. And so on. Then we take our pencil, connect the dots, and it gives us our triangles. Now the difference with these, though, is I'm going to make a point right in the center of these and connect a line to each of the angles of the triangle. I'm making my lines a little rough here. I'll just correct them in the carving later. Then we take our knife, and with this one, you put the point in the center of the triangle and press down. Now this cut forms a stop cut, which means that when you go to slice away the edges here, your chip will stop when it reaches that cut. Come around here and do this one. And there we go. The 6-cut triangle. Let me show you that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And there's our triangle. Simple. The advantage with doing the one with the 6 cuts over the other is that you have more versatility in your forms. You can vary the shape of the triangle quite a bit. Well, like here's some examples of the 6-cut triangle. Each one of these is just one of those triangles arranged differently. But you see, with this one, you can vary the length of it and the proportions. You can make it curve. You can do all sorts of things with it. This design down here is just done with the same little 6-cut triangle many times over. Let me show you those two just to compare them. There's a 6-cut and a 3-cut. Those two techniques are all there is to chip carving. And with that, for thousands of years, people all over the world have been creating some really interesting designs. For today, what I'd like to do is our breadboard. And with this breadboard, what I've done is I've made a border around here, and these are all formed with that little 3-sided triangle, a little Dreischnitt. And then I've gone and taken and made a notch in each one of those resulting diamonds, and that gives sort of a, looks like a little bit like a flower petal. The circular design is called a rosette, and this one has been carved out with the 6-cut triangles. Each one of these is just a little bit different. It looks well, it looks like it'd be terribly complex, but actually it goes along quite quickly, and it's a lot of fun. Let me show you how to get started with this guy. Let me rearrange my decks a little here. Begin with, you trace an outline for your breadboard onto a piece of wood. Basswood has been the traditional wood that's been used for centuries. You need a wood that's fairly soft and has a nice tight grain. You can also use pine or aspen or maybe even poplar, but basswood is the one that's kind of preferred all over the world, really. This design in the center is called a quatrefoil. And let me show you how I make that. I take a compass here and make a circle about 4 inches in diameter and just run the circle all the way around. Then I've taken and used a square and made 2 perpendicular lines in the center of that circle that go through the center. At each point where those perpendicular lines touch the edge, I draw another arc using the same radius on my compass. And just go around and make these 4 arcs. And what that does is it leaves you with 4 almost like petals in here, like lobes. And these shapes are something that's a very common design in Switzerland because it looks like the flowers that you find in the high alpine meadows. So it's a very popular design there. And then these other sections here, blank spots, I've just gone in and sort of free-handed in the shapes where my triangles are going to be, starting with the deep point of this rather curved triangle and drawing a line to each angle. Around the edge, I've taken my compass and gone around made a circle around for these petals, and then I've gone through and made some triangles, and these will be the edges of the petals. Now let me show you how we carve this guy out. I'm going to start with the outer petals here, because this is a simple 3-cut triangle. When you're doing this, it's a good idea to make all of your cuts on one angle at a time. For example, I'm doing this one here and this one here. Then I'll come over, do this one here, and this one here using the same angle of the knife. And that saves you hopping back and forth a lot. And I'll just cut that out. Chip carving is probably the oldest art form in the world. This type of incised carving was found in pieces of bone, some of them dating back, like 4000 BC. Predates writing. This is kind of the high point of incised carving. Chip carving itself developed simultaneously all over the world. It was a very popular type of folk art in the rural regions of Scandinavia, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Soviet Union, even in the Mediterranean area, and some places in Africa they've even found examples of it. It's a lot of fun to do. So that's how we do the little borders with the little 3-cut triangles. Now, for doing these others, I'm going to take my knife, press it in the center of this triangle, and then bracing my hand on the wood here, I'm just going to kind of draw that up so it makes an angle up out of the wood. And then make my other cut here, and turn this around a bit, make my other cut there. Then it's just a simple matter of slicing away the wood. Often when I'm doing this, I can kind of envision my ancestors sitting in a farmhouse someplace in Europe, one of these big wooden farmhouses where you have like 3 floors out in the alpine areas. And I can envision them sitting by the hearth with the wind howling against the shutters, carving these things out. In the alpine regions and the Bavarian parts of Europe, they would take and they would carve everything with these. They'd make boxes, and they would carve milk carts or milk stools, and they'd carve the chairs and the beams. I guess they had long winters there and it kept them busy. And there's one of our cuts. I'll do another one here. Actually, it's kind of an interesting custom. In Holland, when a young gentleman was courting a young lady, he would take and carve a mangle board with these chip carved designs. And that was it was a long piece of wood that was sort of a paleo spin dry. It was used in laundry. And they had a roller, and they'd wrap the clothes around this, and then they'd just take and press the water out with this board. But these press boards, or mangle boards, were really decorated very ornately. And the guy would make one to show his girlfriend, and she would look at that and say, "My, he must really like me because of all the time that's gone into it." And then her parents would look at it and say, "Well, the guy's probably not all bad. He looks like he can do some work with his hands, so he might be useful to have around." And of course, I suppose the other thing too is with a laundry implement, there's probably an implied message too that, well, I've spent all this time carving this thing for you, so you better make sure my shirts are clean.